The morning of Chloe's 18th birthday didn't smell like the expensive vanilla bean cake sitting on the counter or the mountain of blueberry pancakes Sarah had spent all morning flipping with practiced, nervous energy. It smelled like the cold, damp Pacific Northwest fog creeping through the window cracks of our Queen Anne home, and the sharp, metallic tang of a resentment that had been brewing in our household for 3 long years. I had spent 6 months preparing for this day. I wasn't her biological father, but I had tried to be the man who earned that title every single day. I'd picked up every grueling double shift available at the diagnostic clinic in downtown Seattle, pushing my body to the breaking point. I lived on lukewarm vending machine coffee and 4 hours of sleep, all to save up for the gift I knew she coveted, a vintage, mid-century Leica camera. I wanted to be the father figure who saw her passions, who validated her dreams, even if I wasn't the man whose DNA she carried. I thought 18 was the milestone where the walls would finally come down. I thought today she'd finally see me as Mark, the man who loved her, not Mark, the man who stole her mother. But when I walked into the kitchen, the morning light hitting the granite countertops in a way that usually felt like home, Chloe didn't look at the gift. She didn't even look at the breakfast. She looked at me with a gaze so frigid it felt like a physical weight pressing against my ribs. "You want to know what I really want, Mark?" she asked. Her voice wasn't screaming. It was steady, rehearsed, and utterly devoid of warmth. "I don't want the camera. I don't want the fancy dinner at the waterfront. Nanam, I want you to pack a single bag, walk out that front door, and disappear. That would be the best gift you could ever give me, my freedom from you." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah stood by the sink, her hand trembling over a dish towel, her eyes darting between her daughter and her husband. She said nothing. That silence hurt worse than Chloe's words. It was the sound of a woman choosing her past over her present. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button. Give this video a like and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel here at Family Secrets and Revenge. I didn't argue. I didn't plead my case or remind her of the soccer games I'd attended in the pouring rain, or the nights I'd stayed up helping her with calculus when her real father was nowhere to be found. I realized in that moment that if I stayed, I would simply be the villain in her coming-of-age story. Every piece of advice I gave would be control. Every "I love you" would be manipulation. I went upstairs, my legs feeling like lead. Our bedroom, the one I'd painted eggshell white because Sarah liked the way it caught the Seattle sunset, felt like a stranger's room. I packed a single suitcase with my work scrubs and the essentials. I didn't take the 65-inch TV I'd bought for the living room, or the expensive Bose speakers. I only took my clothes, my laptop, in a small wooden box from my desk, the box that held the truth. Before I left, I sat at my laptop and did the one thing that would truly make me disappear. I logged into our property management portal and took my name off the digital lease. I called the insurance company and removed myself from the family policy. I was cutting the ties, not out of spite, but because she had asked for a life without me, and I was going to give it to her, completely. I moved into a cramped gray studio apartment near the industrial docks in Tacoma. It was a place where the fog rolled in thick and the sound of foghorns replaced the suburban quiet of Queen Anne. For the first 48 hours, the silence of that studio was a physical entity. I kept waiting for my phone to buzz, waiting for Sarah to tell me the birthday tantrum had passed, or for Chloe to realize that the intruder she'd kicked out was the only one holding the roof over her head. Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. Living in Tacoma felt like living in a different country. In Seattle, I was Mark the provider, the man with the clinic badge and the steady hands. In this studio, I was just a ghost in a zip-up hoodie. The apartment was above a dive bar, and the floorboards vibrated with the low thrum of bass until 2 a.m. every night. I spent my first few days doing something I hadn't done in years. Nothing. I sat by the window and watched the cargo ships. I realized how much of my life had been spent managing other people's crises. I was so used to being the fixer that I didn't know who I was when nothing was broken. But things were breaking. They were breaking 30 miles north of me, and I was the only one who knew the structural integrity of the life they were still trying to live. I opened the wooden box. Inside were the receipts of a life lived in the shadows. There was a promissory note signed by Julian Miller, Chloe's biological father, dated 4 years ago. He had borrowed $50,000 from a private equity group that didn't use lawyers. They used associates who visited your house at dinner time. I had been paying them $1,200 a month in interest-only payments just to keep them away from the front door. I looked at my bank account. For the first time in a decade, that $1,200 stayed in my pocket. I felt a surge of guilt, followed by a cold, hard sense of justice. If Chloe wanted the gift of my absence, she had to accept the gift of Julian's presence. On the third day of my absence, the honeymoon phase of Chloe's freedom ended abruptly. It started with the small things, the things a pampered teenager never notices until they stop working. The morning began with a strange flickering of the lights. Chloe was in the bathroom using a high-end curling iron I'd bought her for Christmas when the device simply died. Then the overhead lights turned an eerie dim orange before snapping into total darkness. "Mom! The power's out!" Chloe yelled. Sarah tried to call the utility company, but she was put on hold for 45 minutes. When she finally got through, the representative was blunt. The account holder, Mark Henderson, closed the account and requested a final reading 3 days ago. Since no new resident has applied for service at that address, the line was disconnected. Sarah felt a cold pit form in her stomach. She looked at the digital thermostat. The temperature was already dropping. The house was a glass and steel masterpiece, but without the electricity I paid for, it was just a very expensive cave. Chloe tried to use her debit card to buy lunch that afternoon, but it was declined at the drive-thru. The embarrassment of having to hand back a bag of food in front of her friends was her first real taste of a world without Mark. She called the bank, her voice high and panicked. "I'm sorry, Miss Miller," the representative said. "The primary account holder, Mark Henderson, closed the joint secondary line. Since the main account holder has removed his residence from the address on file, the secondary cards were deactivated as per his request to separate all liabilities. If you were in my shoes watching the family you sacrificed everything for realize they've thrown away their only protector, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. By late afternoon of the 4th day, the house was freezing. Sarah and Chloe sat in the living room, wrapped in wool blankets, eating cold cereal by the light of their iPhones. That's when the heavy, rhythmic knock came at the front door. It wasn't the knock of a friend. It was the knock of a man who was there to collect. Chloe, still fueled by a dwindling sense of defiance, marched to the door. "We're dealing with a utility issue. Go away." "I'm not from the electric company, Miss Miller," a voice replied. It was deep, professional, and terrifyingly calm. "Yes, I'm from Blackwood Asset Management. My name is Elias Thorne." Chloe opened the door. Standing there was a man who looked like he belonged in a corporate boardroom or a courtroom. Behind him sat a black sedan with government-grade tint. "I'm looking for Mark Henderson," Elias said, adjusting his glasses. "He doesn't live here," Chloe said, her voice trembling. "He left. He moved out." Elias Thorne's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed. "That's a catastrophic development for you, Chloe. See, Mark Henderson was the only person keeping this property out of a forced liquidation. Your father, Julian, took out a series of high-interest bridge loans against this deed. He defaulted 3 years ago. The only reason you haven't been living in a shelter is because Mark signed a personal guarantee to cover the interest out of his salary. Since he has officially vacated the premises and terminated his guarantee, the grace period is over. You have 72 hours to vacate the property before the locks are changed." Chloe felt the world tilt. "My father, he said the house was paid off." "Your father lied," Elias said, handing her a thick stack of legal documents. "Mark spent 3 years paying for that lie. Since you wanted him gone, you've inherited the debt he was paying for you. Good luck, Miss Miller." Chloe didn't cry, not at first. She went down to the basement, to the small corner I used to call my office. It was just a desk and a filing cabinet, tucked away near the water heater. I had taken the family secrets folder, but in my haste to leave, I had left behind the handwritten ledger I kept for my own sanity. She sat on the cold concrete floor with a flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness of the powerless house. She flipped through the pages. August 2022. $4,500. Payment to Julian's Vegas creditor to stop the house calls. December 2022. $3,000. Chloe's emergency dental surgery, out of pocket. June 2023. $15,000. Replacing the college fund Julian drained. Page after page, year after year. Every single cent I had earned at the clinic. The overtime, the holiday shifts, the missed dinners. It was all there. I wasn't hoarding money. I was pouring it into a sinking ship just to keep her dry. She found a letter tucked into the back of the ledger. It was dated for her 18th birthday. I know, it was the letter I had written while she was upstairs screaming that she hated me. Dear Chloe, I know you see me as the man who took your father's place. I know you think my rules are meant to stifle you. But the truth is, the world is much harsher than you realize. I've spent every day of the last 3 years trying to build a wall between you and the mistakes Julian made. I don't want your gratitude. I don't even need you to like me. I just want you to reach 18 with a roof over your head and a future in front of you. Happy birthday. If you ever need me, I'll be where I've always been, in your corner. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story and share your thoughts in the comments. Regret isn't a sudden realization, it's a slow-acting poison. For Chloe, it started in her fingertips as she held that cold ledger. She realized that every no I'd ever said, no to the $500 shoes, no to the unmonitored spring break trip, wasn't because I wanted to control her. It was because the $500 was going to a man in a black sedan so she wouldn't have to meet him. She looked at the walls of the basement. She remembered me painting them. She remembered me fixing the leak in the ceiling that Sarah had ignored for months. She realized that I had spent 3 years being a servant to a family that treated me like an intruder. She tried to call her biological father, Julian. For the first time in her life, she didn't call to ask for money or for a story. She called to ask for the truth. The number you have reached is no longer in service, the automated voice said. She tried again. Same result. So Julian hadn't just moved. He had evaporated the moment the debt became too real. Chloe sat in the dark, the silence of the house finally matching the silence in her heart. She wasn't an adult because she turned 18. She was an adult because she finally realized she was alone. The next evening, it started to pour. A true Washington deluge. I was walking back from the clinic, my scrubs soaked, when I saw a familiar car idling outside my apartment building in Tacoma. It was the old Subaru I'd bought for Chloe's 17th birthday. Chloe was standing outside the car, no umbrella, her hair plastered to her face. She looked smaller than I remembered. The fire in her eyes had been replaced by a deep, weary dampness. I found you, she said, her voice barely audible over the Tacoma traffic. I wasn't hiding, Chloe, I said, stopping a few feet away. I was just doing what you asked. I disappeared. I saw the ledger, Mark, she whispered. She reached into her jacket and pulled out the vintage Leica. She held it out to me like a peace offering. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve the house. I don't even deserve to be standing here. You're right, I said. You don't. But I didn't do those things because you deserved them. I did them because I chose to be your father. And fathers don't stop being fathers just because their kids are being kids. I told you to leave, she cried, the tears finally mixing with the rain. I told the only person who actually cared about me to go away. Why didn't you tell me the truth about Julian? Why did you let me hate you? I didn't move back into the house in Queen Anne. That was my revenge. Not a loud, violent revenge, but the revenge of boundaries. We sat in my studio, the sound of the rain drumming against the thin glass. I'm not coming back, Chloe, I said. That house is gone. The debt is too high, and the memories are too bitter. I've already signed the paperwork for a short sale. Elias Thorne and his people will get the proceeds, and the debt will be cleared. But you and your mother, you have to find a new place. But where will we go? She asked, panicked. I've rented a 2-bedroom townhome in Bellevue, I said. It's small. It's not the Queen Anne Heights. But I've paid the first 6 months. After that, Sarah has to go back to work full-time. And you You're going to get a job while you go to school. But no more disappearing father figures to pay for the mistakes of a ghost. The revenge was letting them feel the weight of a normal life. I was done being the superhero who worked 80 hours a week to fund a fantasy. I was going to be a man who lived in a townhome and expected his family to contribute. If you were Mark, could you forgive a child who only came back once they realized they needed your financial protection? Or is some damage too deep to repair? Tell me what you think in the comments. The move to Bellevue was the hardest part. Sarah had to pack up 15 years of luxury into cardboard boxes. We sold the designer furniture, the oversized art, and the history of Julian Miller. The new townhome was quiet. It was efficient. It was honest. See, Sarah got a job as a receptionist at a law firm, the same kind of firm Julian used to run from. Chloe started working at a local coffee shop, the 5 a.m. shifts giving her a taste of the exhaustion I'd lived for years. In the first month, the reality of a 40-hour work week hit Chloe hard. She would come home with aching feet and the smell of roasted beans in her hair, only to find that she still had to cook dinner and study for her community college entrance exams. Sarah, too, was struggling. The woman who once spent her afternoons at high-end spas was now filing papers for attorneys who were younger than she was. But a strange thing happened. Without the family secrets hanging over us, the air in the Bellevue townhome was lighter. We started having dinner together. Not the silent, tense dinners of Queen Anne, but real conversations about our days. One Sunday, Chloe brought me a framed photo. It was a shot of my hands, scarred and calloused from years of work, holding a cup of coffee at the clinic. I wanted to capture the things that built our lives, and she said, I used to hate these hands because they were strict. Now I realize they were the only things holding us up. Sarah and I are still in a strange place. The silence she maintained on Chloe's birthday is a ghost that still sits between us at the dinner table. We're in counseling, trying to figure out if a marriage can survive the realization that one partner was a shield and the other was just a spectator. But Chloe changed the most. She realized her mistake a few days too late to save the fancy life, but she realized it just in time to save her soul. She learned that the best gift someone can give you isn't their absence. It's their presence, even when you don't deserve it. We are rebuilding. It's slow. It's awkward. Sometimes we sit in silence for 20 minutes because we don't know how to bridge the gap of those 3 years of hate. But the silence is different now. It's not the silence of resentment. It's the silence of two people learning how to be a family from scratch. Julian Miller eventually surfaced in Arizona, asking for money through a burner phone. For the first time in her life, Chloe didn't even reply. She blocked the number and went back to her homework. She had a new father now, one who worked in a clinic, smelled like antiseptic, and told her the truth even when it hurt. Before we wrap up this journey, I want to hear from you. Son, what part of Chloe's realization hit you the hardest? Have you ever had a revolving door family member who only appreciated you once you were gone? Share your story below. As I look back on that birthday morning, I realized that Chloe didn't just ask me to leave. She asked for the blindfold to be removed. By leaving, I gave her the most painful, yet most necessary gift: reality. I'm still in Tacoma for now. I like the sound of the foghorns. They remind me that even in the thickest fog, there's a signal telling you where the shore is. I'm no longer the man hiding in the basement with a ledger. I'm the man sitting on the pier with his daughter, watching the ships come in. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about the secrets we keep to protect the people we love, wherein the hard lessons we have to learn when we stop appreciating the people who carry our burdens. Chloe lost a house, but she finally gained a father, one she had to earn back through humility and truth. As for me, I learned that you can't set yourself on fire to keep others warm forever. Sometimes you have to let the fire go out so they can realize how cold the world is without you. Thank you for joining us for this intense journey here on Family Secrets and Revenge. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the shadows of family life. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to hear this today. We'd love to hear your overall thoughts on Mark and Chloe's journey in the comments. Until next time, keep your secrets close, but your truth closer.